Hello, and welcome back Down Below. We've had a couple of great questions this week, and today we're going to have some more. By the way, my name is Steve. I do a lot of work with system and setting on Down Below, but especially character and design.
I am Ian, and I do a lot of system and numbers and business behind the whole thing.
And Down Below, for those of you who are uninformed but still watching this video, is a narrative-based cyberpunk, dystopian, but not really, RPG setting.
Sci-fi, no dice, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So, Steve.
Indeed.
As the character and setting guy, we need to get PCs into this game.
That we do.
And PCs get into games through story hooks. So, let's list some story hooks. Tell me about some good, interesting, unique things that are bad things that happen to people that get them into stories in this game.
Okay, good, interesting, unique things. So what I'm going to do this time is I'm not actually going to provide categories so much as specific examples.
Yep.
Let's talk about a single specific example. You have a player character who is a standard member of society. Their needs are met. They have no weird antisocial tendencies that would mark them as an outcast. This is your normal functioning member of society. How do they fall down the path?
I have a job, and if the job doesn't meet my basic needs, then I have a citizenship, and governments have surpluses in this setting, so I am getting my basic needs met.
Until someone else decides that they want their basic needs met instead. And Bob, on a business trip, wakes up one day with no valid ID credentials.
But I told you I'm Bob.
Well, you were Bob.
Uh-oh.
Now you don't actually legally have a name, because someone has stolen your credentials, and someone has taken the opportunity of a time to cross-map the various blood tests and DNA so that a simple investigation will show that someone else is actually Bob. Bob's friends and family, and possibly even Bob's employer, won't really notice that, but by the time this thing is sorted out, Bob's accounts have been emptied, and Bob is in a lot of trouble. Where does Bob go when he's in trouble? Ideally, Bob would go to his local embassy, Bob would go to his local citizenship, and in probably 90% of the cases, this will be sorted out for Bob within a week. He'll have to tighten his belt for about a week, but he'll be back to normal formula. Where we're concerned about is the other 10% of cases where Bob is now down below because someone has done too good a job, and for whatever reason, Bob is now without identity. Bob only has what he has on his back, his skills, which may or may not, in fact, pay the bills, and a pressing need to find somewhere that will shelter him once his food runs out.
And what makes this case interesting is that something has gone above and beyond in this theft, which means that somebody's got a special interest here. Maybe somebody needed a patsy, and so they did an extra special job on Bob so that they could shove Bob into the line of fire. Or maybe something else.
Let's talk about another specific example. This example is probably going to resonate a lot more with typical role players, because this is a lot more in the, in the special and unique character sense. The derisive form of this is the beautiful and unique snowflake sense, but it doesn't have to be a bad thing. If you look at classic cyberpunk protagonists, most of them are special in some very distinct way. None of them really are John Everyman, no matter how much snobs like to claim that cyberpunk is about the everyman caught in the machine. So let's look at a special case. Let's look at a trained government assassin. This is rife with situational story hooks. Our prospective trained government assassin kills people for the government. They kill undesirables. So there already is one moral hook. What is an undesirable? At what point does one draw the line and say that sure, I may just be doing the job, but this job is taxing my moral structure? There's also the deniable aspect. Anyone who is used in an unethical manner by an apparently ethical commission is ultimately disposable. They may know this, they may not, but at some point they're going to become a convenient, deniable asset and be disappeared. For some of these, you might look at unethical financiers, you might look at unethical trading folks, and they might be publicly hung out to dry. because they don't have the skill set to avoid it. But when someone tries to retire an assassin, well, chances are the person out to retire them is themselves going to get retired, and the assassin is going to go off the grid and end up, guess where? Down below with a very useful set of skills.
An interesting variant on that occurs to me is what happens if the assassin is getting their orders through some pretty dark channels. It could be really hard to authenticate whether those orders came from the proper source. And once you've taken orders that weren't actually your orders, you're out of the system.
And then, just riffing off of that for a moment, I picked something that is fairly outre and unique in a powerful character sense, but the same type of thing can be directly applied to anyone. Let's say that you are a mid-level functionary in some bureaucratic bureau, which I know is redundant, but welcome to the Department of Redundancy department, as the saying goes. And what happens is you start filling orders, you start taking orders that look legitimate but are questionable. If you do not question those orders and keep on doing some illicit things, you may end up, well, being hung out to dry for someone else's fraud. And there we go. Same thing that applies to an assassin also applies to an office worker.
So we have a tendency to see the interest in the mundane when we are creating this setting because of the desire to get back to the roots of the cyberpunk and the fact that everyday people tend to have more interesting skills than most people give them credit for, because I know a lot of everyday people who actually know how to swing a sword. But that might be a strangeness of the people I hang out with. In any case, we've run out of time to explore this question today, so we're going to come back to you tomorrow with a different question.
Yep. Until then, I'm Steve.
And I'm Ian. Thanks for falling through the cracks with us, and if you like us, subscribe and maybe give us $1.